Welcome to the first KiCon virtual developer chat Q&A of 2020. And I'm here today and with many of the KiCad developers, and I'm really excited to talk to all of them. We're going to be doing a 1 to 2 hour discussion here. We got some pre-planned demos. We got some pre-planned questions that people have submitted over Twitter and different forums and things like that. So we're really excited to share all these with our audience. So excited, my dog's barking in the background. And yeah, so let's all start with some introductions, and then we'll go from there. So Wayne, why don't you start with you, and we'll go on down the chain.
Okay, my name is Wayne Stambaugh. I'm currently the lead developer for the KiCad project. Who's next?
We should have gone alphabetical. I'm sorry about that. John, why don't you go next?
All right. Hey, I'm John Evans. I've been working on KiCad since about 2016.
Great. Ian?
Yep, I'm Ian McInerney. I've been working on KiCad for the last year or so, but I've been using it since around probably 2012, 2013.
Jeff?
I'm Jeff Young. I've only been working on it a couple years, but I'm just shattered listening to Ian pronounce his last name because I've been saying it in my head wrong all the time.
Adam, how about you?
Hi, I'm Adam Wolf, and I've been doing Mac packaging for a while.
Great. Nick?
Hey, I'm Nick Østergaard, mostly known as Nick OA when I write. I've been actively involving myself with KiCad since, I don't know, early 2014, and I've been doing a lot of work to try to help fix not, core code things, but, things around like the website and making sure that we can release builds on various platforms.
Seth, how about you?
I'm Seth Hilbrand. I've been a KiCad developer for a few years now. I'm also, along with Wayne, one of the operators of the KiCad Services Corporation, and we provide professional support for KiCad and fix bugs, implement features for corporations.
Awesome. And Renee?
Hi, I'm René Böschel. I have been the head of the library team until quite recently. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and we may have one more Tom from CERN may also end up joining us as well. So we're excited to have him. We can only max out at 10 people, but there are others that work on the project, and that includes all of you out there that are using it, sharing it. That is a super important piece of developing community and developing the project. It is a very collaborative effort. Obviously, the people here on screen, myself excluded, are really digging in and adding those new things. And we're here today to talk about the version 6 release. And so that's super exciting. And so Wayne's going to give a little bit of an overview and talk about, kind of what's coming and just the status of the project as a project lead.
Okay, well, thank you. I'd like to say thanks everybody for attending this virtual conference. I know that's not exactly what we had intended when we talked about KiCon last year. I know I was looking forward definitely to go to CERN again, for the second time. So it was a little disappointing that we've got canceled, but I've got some good news. But first I'd like to share a little quick project status with everyone. I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible because I really want us to focus on some of the new features on version 6 and leave more time for Q&A. So it's just going to be just a few page demo here. I want to talk about a few things, and I know I don't really want to talk about COVID because I know if you're like me, you're probably sick and tired of hearing about it. But if you have a chance, one of the things that happened this year due to that was the Open Ventilator Project. I don't know how many people are aware of it, but a company called, I believe it was Medtronics, had pushed an obsolete version of a ventilator publicly, and Seth had picked it up and just, started a simple project on GitLab, and it really turned into a full-blown project with people collaborating all over the world. It's really impressive, and I think it shows the true potential of open hardware, and a project like KiCad made that possible. Otherwise something like that could not have happened. So if you get a chance, I highly recommend you just go take a look and see what was done. It's very impressive. A quick note, the latest stable version was released on Wednesday, September 30th. It may not be the last stable version. All depends when we get version 6 out. Big announcement is we are now officially in feature freeze for version 6. So at this point, we have a short list. Yeah, we have a short list of features that are near completion that will be allowed in, but everything outside that list will be pushed back to version 7. So now it begins the task of bug fixing and getting everything stable and polished and ready for V6 release. That question came up, so I'll hold off on timetables for the Q&A. We are just approaching 1 year as a member of the Linux Foundation, and I think we're right around 20K in project donations through the Linux Foundation. So that's going really well. Thank you to everybody who donated. Also, the good news is that CERN, in spite of what happened this year, CERN is going to step up and host KiCon 2021. So keep your eyes out for information on that. We'll definitely be looking forward to hopefully a live conference next year. And as always, I just want to say a quick thanks because a lot of work goes in to make all this happen. I want to thank Chris because he put this all together and organized the virtual conference. As always, thanks to all the developers who contribute their time. I mean, that makes the project happen. Thanks to everyone for their donations. Really impressed with the way the donations have been going for the last couple of years. It keeps incrementally increasing. So the project's obviously gaining a lot of traction all over the world. And thanks everybody for using KiCad and your continued support. And thanks for attending this virtual conference. So on that note, I'm going to talk about a few of the things that I worked on. I'm going to try to keep this brief. One of the primary things that had to happen for V6 and kind of was, at least for the schematic editor, was the new file formats. So those are done. And even though those are things that aren't user facing, that established the laid the groundwork for all the new features that have been added to the schematic editor, which are pretty considerable. So I'd like to just highlight a couple of them. One of the primary ones is we now have lots of pretty colors. You can change colors for buses and wires to your heart's content. You can pick, if you're not happy with the standard color, you can change colors of wires and buses. This was a feature that was actually paid for through KiCad Services Corporation. So you can change buses and line colors. You can also set them with net classes, so you can have defined net classes that highlight your wires and buses. So it's really a nice feature. It's nothing particularly special, but it's been one of those things that have been around for a really long time. One of the other things that I had a chance to work on was one of the things that people were never happy about was not being able to rename non-copper layers. Now all layers are you can change the username, not just the copper layers. So if you take a look here, all the layers are nameable. You also have the ability now to add we added 9 new user-defined layers. So these can be used for anything, any kind of drawings or other type information you want to put on them. You can rename those as well. So
as someone who talks to beginners a lot, don't do it until you're an advanced user.
What's that? Oh,
change all the names. They're gonna be like, well, this is like the puppy layer, and this one is like the the Superman layer.
Yep. You can do all that. Yeah. The names there are a few limitations with names because they're used for file. Yep. When we plot, we use them for file names. So there's some limitations on characters, but you're basically allowed to fully rename all the layers now. That's cool. And that was one of the things that have been, I think that one's been sitting around for quite a few years now. So that's all doable. Those are the major highlights. I know a lot of people worked on a lot of other things other than that. those are the big things that I worked on. And of course, obviously, the file format changes are ongoing. But I will now turn it over to John Evans, so he has a demo plan with some of the really big new features in KiCad.
All right. So yeah, this is really exciting for me. I've actually been working on version 6 since before version 5 was released. So really excited to be able to show some things off to you. First of all, there's a ton of features that have gone in since version 5, and I'm only going to be able to show you a couple of them. I'm going to give a really shallow look at them. So I just wanted to highlight a few things that look good on video, and there's a whole lot more that will be in the release notes. So first of all, looking at a schematic, couple little things you can see. First of all, we've got some subsheets here. You notice they have colors, so you can give them custom colors if you want. You can change the background and the border if you want to use that to indicate things. One neat thing is buses. So the way buses work has been completely overhauled in version 6. So you can now sort of pack different nets that don't have the suffix thing into a single bus. And there's also a tool where you can sort of quickly break out anything that's in a bus and just pull it out into a wire. So that's pretty handy. And a lot of the things that happened under the hood to make this possible make it so that highlighting of buses works a lot better. And you can also do things like say you have like a long list of things you want to include in a bus, you can sort of create a shortcut for that so that your labels aren't as long. One of the biggest things is just the way that you deal with objects in the schematic. If you've been using KiCad, you know that the schematic editor didn't really work the way that you might expect a graphical editor to work. It uses a little bit different paradigm than the PCB editor. Well, for version 6, that's been fixed thanks to a lot of hard work from Jeff and others. So now you can actually select things. You can drag select things. They stay selected. You can sort of do the traditional thing where you first select something and then you decide what you want to do with it, if you want to move it around or something like that. So something like that, we're hoping just makes it a little bit easier for new people coming into KiCad, or for people who are switching back and forth between KiCad and another design tool. There'll be a little bit less culture shock when you're drawing your schematics, we hope. Another neat thing is text variables. So you can sort of set up variables that you want to substitute in your project, and you can keep track of these, and they apply like all through your project. So you can use them in the schematic, you can use them in the board, and then you can sort of put them wherever you can put text. So you see here, I put this variable in here in the label, and it's showing up here. Maybe it doesn't make sense to do that in the label, but that's up to you. And what else in the schematic? ERC. So there's been a lot of things changed about ERC. One of the most exciting ones, though, is you can now set the severity of all the different ERC checks. So if there's an ERC check, you're just like, I don't care about that. Just set it to ignore, and you won't get warned about it. And then you've got your standard map of all the pins. And what's even better is, these are finally saved with the project, so you don't have to keep changing your ERC settings every time you set up a new design. All right, so there's a ton more that's changed on the schematic side, but in the interest of keeping this brief, I'm going to switch over to the board now. So one of the things I want to talk about is there's a lot of new UI over here on the right-hand side. Starting first at the bottom, we've got this new selection filter, and this changes what happens when you click or drag around with the mouse. So, by default, it's on all items, and so everything sort of works like you would expect. If you click on top of the, 2 more objects, you will get this menu, and you can pick which one you want. But say you're just like placing components and you just want to move them. So you can actually say, okay, I only want to select footprints right now. So now, if you click on a zone, if you click on a via, you won't get it. And you can also see I can't click on this footprint right now because it's actually locked. So you can also check this box if you want to be able to pick up locked items. So now I can pick that up. And you see above this, the whole layer manager got sort of a visual overhaul here. And one of the things that comes with that is you can control the transparency of different types of objects. So you'll notice I have my zones here a little bit transparent. I can turn that down. This comes in really handy when you're dealing with multi-layer boards where it gets kind of busy. And then there's this third tab, which is brand new, where you can see all of the nets in your board. So you can do a number of different things with this. One thing is you can give colors to different nets. So right now, say I wanted to show everything on ground in maybe a green color. I can just set that up. And now all of the rat's nest lines for the ground net are green. And I can also show that on all of the copper too. So if you're laying something out and it makes more sense to you to see those net colors, you can do that. And you can also apply those to net classes, and you can turn them off. So yes, the thing that I've seen people asking for years and years, you can turn off your ground net now. All right. Next, some tweaks are happening to the toolbars here. So you'll see we've got some tools that have this little black arrow here. You can actually pull these out. So there's new dimension types, and you can access them here. I've showed some demo videos of this on Twitter. And what else? There's now a rectangle tool, so you can quickly draw rectangles instead of having to draw 4 lines. And one neat thing about graphic shapes now is you can actually convert them back and forth. So say I just drew this graphic, I can go in, if I can select that. Oh, selection filter is working. So I can go into special tools and I can convert this to other types of object. So say I wanted this to be a polygon, now it's a polygon. And I can also convert it to a zone or anything like that. So I think someone asked in the Q&A, can you import a DXF onto a copper layer and create a filled shape out of it? And the answer is now yes, because you can use this tool. You'll bring in your DXF, it'll be lines, so you can select all those lines and you can convert them to a zone, you can convert them to a polygon. So hopefully that should make some workflows easier where you're bringing in shapes from another tool. And
yeah, the artist people are going to love that, I think.
Yeah.
They're going to really, really, really love that.
So looking at copper zones, let me just filter for zones here and go to my top layer. So there's some new settings for zones. First of all, you can have one zone go on more than one layer. So say you want ground on all these layers, you can just create one zone object and it'll fill all of them. You don't have to copy paste that on different layers. Another thing is we now have a hatch pattern fill. So if you want a hatch pattern, you can set up what kind of angle you want and the gaps between things, and you can get this kind of hatch pattern. This one's perhaps a little big, but you can fine tune all that. And let's jump over to the footprint editor. Show off some stuff here. So while I create a custom pad, Jeff, do you want to talk about custom pads a little bit?
Let me unmute first. So in, I believe 5.1, we added the ability to do custom pads, but it was all through dialogue. So you had to say, I want a rectangle and these are the 4 corners. So now you can still do it that way if you want, but there's also a WYSIWYG editing mode where you can take any given pad, including one that wasn't a custom shape to start with, and edit it just by using the normal graphic tools. So everything that you add on a copper layer that actually touches the pad, when you recombine it, it will then make that into a custom pad. This also makes it much easier. A lot of footprint specifications are going to have the pad dimensions relative to the anchor, the footprint, not relative to each pad. So this makes it a lot easier to do stuff like that as well.
Yep, this is really cool. So switching back to the board, let's talk about design rules. So this is a big thing for version 6. So first of all, just looking at the DRC check dialog here, it's gotten a visual overhaul thanks to Jeff, and just sort of makes it easier to see what's going on. And then, oops, looks like there's currently a crash. So, one thing you have to understand about a feature freeze is that, this is maybe the point where it's least stable compared to most stable, which we want to be at a release. So we just got finished adding all of the features. So now we need to take the time to actually make them work properly. So looks like I won't be able to run DRC, but what I can do is show you the DRC rules. So you have your, this is the old DRC dialog setup where you have all your constraints that apply across your board. This works for a lot of designs, but when you get to more advanced designs, this can be a little bit limiting. So what we've done is added this custom rule system, and this lets you really get into the details. And it's hard to show a good demo here because there's all sorts of things to cover, but basically you can set up any kind of condition where you have some expression like, okay, I want to match pads on the outer layer against certain types of zones, or you can give a name to a zone and say, okay, I only want to test this zone. You can get really custom here, and this allows you to do a lot of really powerful things. We've been playing around with things. We have some of our users who've been testing this and have been reporting lots of bugs and also using it to accomplish designs. So we're very excited about this. It's going to be really neat to see what people do with this. And
John, real quick, start typing in a rule there so they can see the autocomplete.
oh yeah, so we've got this nice editor here where you can sort of see what kinds of things are available. So it's not just a text box. It gives you a little bit of help, and there's also this bug checker here. So it'll sort of you can debug it and see what's going on if you have some kind of error.
Oh yeah, and speaking of that, you can also debug it within the board editor by selecting, for instance, a single object and saying, "Show me all the rules that apply to this," or two objects and say, "Show me the clearance that applies between these two objects."
Yeah, so I'll show that here. Maybe I've got these two pieces of track selected. So I can go to clearance resolution here, and it'll just walk you through. And when you've got something really complicated going on, this can be really handy. I have used some other design tools, some commercial tools, where you can define these kinds of rules, and they didn't have this kind of debugger, and it sometimes gets really hairy when you're trying to figure out what's going on. So I like this a lot. And with that, I think that's the end of the demo that I sort of prepared ahead of time. So let's turn it over to the group, and we'll try to answer some of the questions that people asked.
Okay, we're going to go through these. We have a list of 15 questions that were answered ahead of time or asked ahead of time. And so we've kind of got a list here to go through. So the first one is about trace highlighting from Mano. It says, will it be possible to highlight label trace with different colors and schematics to label and distinguish between analog ground, high current, noisy track, etc.? And I believe Jeff is going to take that one.
Yeah, certainly. So there's two different things there. Well, this all bleeds into some other questions, but for starters, you can even start with that kind of stuff all the way back in the schematic editor. Now you can define a net class in the schematic editor, which will then get brought through over into the PC board editor. So as John showed, you can give that net class colors or whatever in the schematic editor and then bring it into the PCB editor where you can also give it colors. And then you can use the text-based DRC rules to say that, between these two high voltage things, or between these two high voltage things on this particular layer, or between these two high voltage things only to a plated hole might have a different clearance. Or there's just you can get as fancy as you want within the rule system.
Okay. Next question is from Chris Gamble. It says, how is KiCad version 6 going to include more tie-ins to industry? So how will the program change? How
Leading the
users-
witness here, Wayne. These are all these. This is a canned question here. This is actually this is targeted kind of like things like you and Seth and I have talked about before. But like how is it all playing together? So like one of the things that came up with that awesome new DRC editor was like board houses, and like board houses could give files here. But how is it gonna like interact with the rest of the broader ecosystem? I think.
Seth, this is your question.
Sure. This is one of the things that Wayne and I have been focusing on during version 6, which is trying to figure out the pain points that prevent industry from adopting KiCad as a circuit design solution of choice. And one of the things that we have been working on bringing into V6 that we haven't demoed yet is the ability to actually search and find parts in eSchema through interfaces back to distributors and consolidators. So this is something that will be showing in V6, where you can find a part that is not in your current library, but is provided by either a distributor like KiCad or Mauser, or one of the consolidators like Octopart or SnapEDA, and bring that directly into your schematic. And if they have a footprint as well, bring that in, and then you get an entire package created in one point. So that's one point of industry interaction. And then on the other side, we have the interaction after you've finished designing the board, and that is, how do you get your design from KiCad out to a board house? And there are a couple of board houses currently that can import the KiCad files directly. The Oshpark is one of them, and Eisler is another. Both of these board houses are friends of KiCad, and they are excellent places to actually get your project fabricated. But we want to bring a larger set of board houses into the KiCad ecosystem, and the way we're working on doing that is through the plugin system. So what we're doing for version 6 is we're expanding out this plugin system in order to get it to actually pull the KiCad parameters that are needed by the board house in order to determine price and manufacturability, DFM checks in KiCad, so we can send that out in the format the board house wants it. So all board houses tend to have a slightly different format. They want their Gerbers, they want everything zipped together, they want the plated through holes and the non-plated through holes in a single file, or not. They have different rules that help them to process the board more effectively. So we're working with board houses that have expressed interest in this to create plugins within KiCad that will build out this automatic package and package and ship functionality into PCB new that links them at both ends. And so these are the two sides of industry interaction that we are currently working on for version 6 and will be in the V6 release.
Okay. The next question is, how can people get involved with KiCad? If someone is interested in helping to grow the project, how can they help? These may include things like development, marketing, sponsorship, spreading the good word, creating demos, etc. Seth, can you take that one?
Sure. Before I do, though, I just noticed Tom W. has joined us. Sorry, we missed Tom earlier, but Tom, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, my name's Tom. I code for KiCad from time to time, work at CERN, live in Geneva, so that's why I arrived late because of the traffic. and the inability to find a parking spot. My recent involvement in KiCad has been on the push and shove and design rule checker front, so I can tell you a bit about that.
Great.
Yep.
Excellent. Thanks, Tom. It's good to see you. How do we get involved in KiCad? So there are a number of ways that we would welcome your involvement in KiCad. And by you, I mean, yes, you, everyone watching. We, first and foremost, are only a project because people use KiCad. People like KiCad. People use it to build their businesses, to design their boards, to work in so many different ways to build really amazing projects. And that right there, out doing that work and spreading that word, maybe toss in a hashtag KiCad on your project page. That's great. We love that kind of involvement. If you want to get more involved, we have a forum that is run by Chris Gamble at forum.kicad.info. And on that forum, you can find a very helpful, very friendly community that is willing to answer any question you have and help you to do better work with KiCad and help you introduce you to the KiCad ecosystem. Answering questions there, fantastic way to be involved in KiCad. Now you want to be involved in the project itself. You want to come into the project itself and work directly on something that gets distributed out to the rest of the KiCad ecosystem. Then we have a lot of room for your contribution. One of the things that we need more than anything, we need people who want to help write about KiCad. So we have a fair number of coders. We always welcome more coders. We plenty of coding tasks to do, but we don't have a lot of people who are skilled at technical documentation. So we have coder documentation, and all of the people you see on the screen have written some amount of documentation on the various features, and we're going to be building this out for V6. But technical writing is something that we have traditionally lacked, but we do have a documenters stream, and so you can come into the KiCad project, and you can get involved in the documentation process. There's a thread on the forum. I'm not sure, Chris, if you can pull that up real quick. I'll see if I can get the link for you. But there is you can get involved. It's essentially called "How Do I Help KiCad?" This is a thread with all of the links for the various things that you can do to involve yourself with KiCad. And this was if you want to search, Chris, this was a thread that I had written. So I'm not sure if you have an author search there or something.
Just need to know what to search for.
I will find it quick.
Okay.
I know where to find it.
Okay. Excellent. So in this thread, I give you all the links that you need for the documentation. So documentation is one. Great. Now, let's say that you speak a different language. Yeah, obviously, we're conducting this forum here in English, but KiCad is translated into 20 different languages, and of those, 8 of those languages are 22 different languages. Of those, 8 of those languages are more or less completely translated, and the remaining are partially translated. So that's what you see in that graph there, kind of partial translation. All of those, they were translated for an earlier version of KiCad, but then the person who was doing the translation was not able to continue. and so there's some amount of translation left to do. And this was a chart that I created for this post back in 5.1. And so we'd updated for version 6, and it'll change a little bit. If you speak any of those languages and want to add an additional translation or finish one of the translations that is outstanding, that would be a fantastic help to the KiCad project. It brings us to a much wider audience. So translation is one. Then we get into footprints and symbols. So if our footprints and symbols, that's the librarians, they are always looking for additional people who want to learn how to. Oh, did I not include that in there? That's that's a large oversight. I'm going to fix that on the forum after this. The librarians have a backlog. We have an enormous number of people who have donated their time and their symbols into the KiCad library, but the KiCad library has very high standards, and this is a fantastic resource for everyone who comes into KiCad. But the KiCad library has very high standards, and so it needs to have the people who are going to review those symbols and footprints and 3D models to make sure that they are actually up to our standards and help people to fix them when they're not. That
I would say over time too, that that's like a feature that from a community standpoint, that's something that's just going to get more and more people in, because it becomes this, this shared resource that everyone really can benefit from.
I like to say the KiCad libraries are this hidden feature that no one talks about so much, but really under Renee's kind of leadership and guidance, this has gone from a library that was just starting to come into its own into this enormous repository of symbols and footprints. 90% of the time I can find what I'm looking for in there, or something very close. Like it is a great resource. If you haven't looked at it recently, it is a great resource for designers to avail themselves of. And we need more librarians, and we need people who want to learn those standards, learn the KiCad standards, and be able to help others come along to that. And librarians are fantastic.
I feel like we should come up with a different name. I mean, I know that librarians are awesome, but like, just the connotation, like we should be like protectors of the footprint realm or something similarly exciting. We need
some other acronym that is
right.
way more awesome. I mean,
right. We'll have to we'll put that down on the to-do list. So in addition to librarians, if you're a coder and you want to come and contribute code, that's fantastic. The majority of KiCad is written in C++, but, and this is a big caveat, all of the plugins and all of the external interaction that happens. So any of the footprint generators, the footprint wizards, any of the board house interactions, any of the user plugins, all of these are Python. And so we have a contingent of Python, but we have only a few Python developers. And so if you're if you're familiar with Python and you want to come and contribute to KiCad, we have some openings for you. This is a great area of growth for KiCad, and we'd love to have you on board. And finally, if you're a
Seth, before you do that, sorry,
yeah.
I wanted to mention about the extensibility of like the plugins and all that stuff too. Like, so I use this professionally, and like the number of times that I've been able to like go and just like search for a plugin that like saves my butt on like needing to do something, curve traces or whatever it is, it just basically like the extensibility through that, and the people that are also, spending their time having these open repos, it's just really, really useful. The interactive bomb plugin, oh my God, that saved me so many hours of like while I'm like picking my manual pick and place with my fingers, like so just all of the tools. It's great.
Yeah, I would second that. We have some amazing plugins, and with the coming API for version 6, where we're going to introduce and maintain a stable API for the plugin development. We're hoping that this will continue to grow and become a larger resource for the KiCad community. So come on in. The water's fine. We're a friendly group of people, and we really welcome any additional contribution, and we'll help you get up to speed on anything that you need to know, and kind of help kind of protect and guard you as you learn your way into the KiCad system. We're all new at one point, and we know what that looks like, what that feels like, and we want you to be a part of it too.
Okay. Are we ready for the next question? Okay, the next question is, and this one's a favorite of the developers, is what is the future of WX widgets? And the question is, considering the endless cross-platform issues with WX widgets, do you regret this choice? If so, if you had to rewrite KiCad from scratch, what other solution would you choose? Well, that's kind of a loaded question. It's not easy to answer. Given the fact that KiCad was started in 1992 and the choices weren't that great. WX widgets was well established. And at that point, Qt, which would have been the other competing widget set, wasn't completely open yet. So there was licensing issues at that time. So if you had to go back at the same time, I don't think the decision would be that much different. Now, if you just started today, yeah, there's a lot of things that we would probably do differently. There's a lot of endless choice of options. It's not even just between WX and Qt anymore. We've been talking about it behind the scenes with the development team. I will say this. I think the primary problem with at this point is it's just the amount of legacy code we have. If we were at the point where our new feature requests got down to like there was only one or two, and we were all sitting around trying to figure out what we were going to do next, then I would say that's a possibility to start maybe looking at other alternatives for UI. But in the short term, WX widgets is it until we, like I said, we have. I mean, if you're starting to look at some of the early version 7 lists, I mean, we've already got an ambitious list of new features for version 7. So trying to do a release with a bunch of new features and trying to change UI at the same time would be, I don't think it would be very conducive, and wouldn't be a very happy development team if we had to do that at the same time. So I think at some point we will maybe look at that and start to try to integrate other things in that look interesting, but I don't think that will happen in the short term. So
that's a great lead-in, Wayne, to the release schedule. Maybe that's on that list, right?
Yeah, it's a little further down. Yeah, it's one of the questions coming up. So that's that question. The next question is, what's new in terms of net classes? John talked about a little bit about this on his demo, but with so many new things regarding design rules and board setup, I'm particularly interested in what's new in terms of net classes and what's yet to come. So this is a question for Jeff.
Yeah, I think I covered most of that with moving the net classes into EE schema, allowing them to come into the board, doing the color stuff. Unless anybody else thinks of anything, I think we've already gone over most of that. As far as what are we thinking of next, I think John would probably be a better guy for that. I'm only a hobbyist on the electronic side. I'm a professional coder.
Yeah, I guess what I can add to that is, we're trying to gradually make KiCad capable of doing more and more complicated designs over time. And with added complexity in your designs, you need added things to keep track of all the different signals going around, and you want to do more complicated things. And so we've started to do some of that with version 6, with being able to define net classes in the schematic. Being able to write those custom design rules against net classes is one of the things you can do there. And I think that will continue in future releases. We'll keep looking at, what do people need in order to do higher end design. That's one of the goals. Is we don't want people to say, well, I would use KiCad, but I can't because my design is just too complicated, and KiCad can only handle simple stuff. So that's the direction we're going. We're trying to find the right balance of adding those features slowly over time and keeping them usable, because we also want KiCad to be user friendly. One of the things about the UI thing that we were just talking about is we're looking for opportunities where we can continue to improve the UI while staying with WX widgets, and we're thinking about ideas there. So we're definitely keeping usability in mind as we start adding these more what you would call power user features.
Okay, the next question is change to the release schedule. Is there a plan to reduce the release cycle from 2 years to 1 so stable users can enjoy new features sooner? That's me. We have talked about that in the past. I think that that's probably going to be a goal for version 7, is to try to go to, I don't want to draw a line in the sand and say every, on 1 year increments, kind of like how Ubuntu does with their 6 months, every 6 months. But I think we're going to try to, even if it means we're going to reduce the feature set for each new version. Version 6 was quite a large change. I think the last time I looked, since we branched 5.1, there was over 10,000 new individual commits. So it's quite a large change set for V6. So I think probably going forward, we may shoot for slightly smaller change set, and then just try to release something near, annually. How that shakes out, that still hasn't been completely determined yet, but we have discussed it. So I think it's most likely going to happen.
One thing to pitch in that, Wayne, is that we were talking about keeping the KiCon as a yearly event, right? And so KiCon right now should be happening about right now, or sometime in September, where we announced a feature freeze, and we're trying to get this feature freeze out, hopefully by early next year, which is typically around the time Wayne does his talk at FOSDEM. And so we're hoping that the KiCad community can join us at KiCon, and the open source community, and join us at FOSDEM. We can kind of bookend the year with a feature freeze and a release. Whether that pans out depends a lot on people contributing. So I'm going to go back to the contribution question, but whether that pans out depends on people's schedules and what we're trying to accomplish. But hopefully we can bring people in to actual in-person meetings with KiCon and with FOSDEM on the other side of the year.
Okay, the next question is the new 3D formats from Hildo. Will version 6 3D package support compressed step files, step Zs, and with the same files, will the same files use Seth's cleanup? In other words, the presentation you gave on reducing the step files at FOSDEM this year.
And as a corollary to that, will we cut off step export unless you switch to the paid version?
That's a question for Seth.
Sorry, subtle dig there.
Actually, there's probably a question for Renee. The code for us in KiCad is in place, but the discussion and the decisions on what the libraries do are not up to the developers. We like to stick our nose in every now and again, but we're not the subject matter experts. Renee is really the subject matter expert here.
Yeah, I hope you hear me fine.
Yep.
I have a new headphone. Yeah, we are currently actively discussing this. There are a number of issues, mainly for the Step C and also the compressed VRL format. This might need a bit more. There are a number of open questions, especially as we are directly linking to the file from the footprints. So there's the question, how would old projects then be handled? And yeah, so this is definitely something where we need to be meticulous and think about everything that can go wrong. One thing that I can guarantee, because it came up already a lot recently, we will keep both formats. So this is something that we recently codified. So we are no worries, we don't drop any of the two, even if this means that for some users, half of them look like unnecessary.
So to clarify there, we're going to be distributing both the VRML, the VRML files, as well as the step files in the libraries. Both of them will continue to be distributed with the packages.
Yes, that's at least on the library in our repo, both will be in. What the packages then make of it, that's another issue.
Right.
Okay, the next. Oh, somebody have something they wanted to add?
I was actually just I'm kind of curious about this, as an outsider here too, like how the interaction goes between the different groups. I mean, like, because you've all been talking about the different sections you work on. I mean, do you all kind of get together and have like big chats like this, or is it more kind of individual? Like, what is the team dynamic of the developer team? Because that might also be useful for people that are looking to get into it. Like, how do they target which thing they want to work on, or where their need is?
It's pretty independent. I mean, I'm always. I mean, I'm on all the mailing lists, so I see everything that goes through, the whole project. But generally, I try not to interfere unless there's a reason. If I see something coming off the rails, or somebody. Really, we haven't had very many issues. I mean, everything has run real smoothly. I mean, and I think that's a tribute to Renee and all the work he's done as the head of the library team. I mean, just watching the progress of that if you really want to see how far the libraries have come, go check out version 4. I think that was right when we started the original library work. So we had these just real basic minimalist libraries available. So basically, when you did any work, you were creating symbols and footprints. And look at it now. I mean, it's just phenomenal. And that's not a huge time span. I mean, but yes, the way the project works is there are independent groups working, but at the end, I mean, I have veto power over everything. So it's I'm the benevolent dictator, if there's such a thing.
If Wayne's holding all the rest of you hostage, just blink a whole lot. we could see it. It just, yeah.
So I try to set it up that way because it's for me. I want to be able to trust the people that run those things, and so far we really haven't had any problems. I mean, everybody has stepped up, and I consider it above and beyond the call of duty from my perspective as a project leader. Like I said, I just watched the rough overview of what's going on day to day. But yeah, it's very much.
When the KLC, the library conventions, they are documented back to 2017 on the website. And even in those few years, a lot of improvements have been gone into the library.
Yes. It's a lot has happened in a very short period of time. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, this was mainly Oliver back shortly before he left us. So the original KLC was basically his brainchild. and he did great work back then. So we could build upon that. And yeah, the large reorganization at the beginning of version 5, I think these were the biggest things that made the library into what it is now.
Yeah, to the coordination aspect, the one thing that we have been doing recently is we moved over to GitLab, and previously we had been kind of distributed in a number of different spots. Some of us were using Launchpad, some of us were using GitHub, and this limited the amount of coordination. It all needed to be in multiple different spots, and you couldn't really link an issue from one to the other. During version 6, we've all been working on bringing everything into the same organization on over at GitLab. And that is one of the goals, is exactly what you were mentioning, Chris, which is coordination. How do we get these disparate groups all talking, working together on the same thing? And so the coordination tools at GitLab for that are what we're kind of looking at utilizing right now. And the other thing that we do use for coordination is another open source platform called Zulip, which is essentially like Slack, but it's open. And it also has some neat features that Slack doesn't have, which is very nice. And we have started using that more, and I feel like other people should chime in here. Chris seems to have zoomed me in, but go out to the there we go. Other people should chime in here, but I find that using the Zulip chat for inter-developer discussion makes things go so much faster and so much smoother. So that's another kind of important tool in our in our tool belt that we've been utilizing.
So I'll just quick go through an example. So one of my main efforts right now is to bring in Python 3 into the macOS stuff. I am pretty ashamed that we are past 2.7's life, but we still have Python 2 in the macOS package. But right now, like myself and Nick and Stefan and a few other people are working on this thing for Python. And this single change is going to rely on an interconnected change in about 5 pieces of software that before the version 6 work was kind of done, those were in probably 4 different groups. And the fact that now that I can have a merge request, like a draft merge request in progress that has links out to the other 4 merge requests, and those merge requests all, as they get closed, it shows up in my merge request. It sounds simple and tiny, but at the same point, with the fact that any minute that people spend on coordination is a minute that they're not spending on making something better. And so when it's things like I just have to copy and paste bug issues between one tracker into another tracker to say why I'm doing things, when these are all linked together, it can be a substantial time saver, and it can really help how much work we can get done in an amount of time.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, next question. This should be pretty quick. I'm just going to, since John already touched on this, the question was, will KiCad version 6 have hatched ground plane support? John demoed that already, so that's pretty simple. Pretty simple, yes. Differential pair. The next question is, how are differential pairs changing? How many layers PCB can be designed with KiCad? And is there a way to have a central library for schematic symbols and footprints? That's kind of a long one.
That's a lot of questions, yeah.
Yeah, that's more than one. Tom, can you take the how the differential pair work is changing?
there will be a couple of improvements on this side. So thanks to our new design rule engine that Jeff and John already talked a bit about, the router will be able to correctly recognize the differential pair gaps, coupling, and lengths. So, for instance, no longer when you drag some traces around, if the router moves a differential pair in shove mode, it won't be broken anymore. So it will do everything to keep the differential pair correctly coupled. Also, the length tuner for differential pairs will be able to use the constraints for the matched lengths or skews defined in the design rules.
Okay.
That's it.
The next question is, are there updates on releases? We touched on that a little bit. So the question was V6 when? As the standard answer, when it's done. But the goal is, and I think it's a pretty reasonable goal since we're in feature freeze, is to have it out about the same time as FOSDEM would have occurred, which is always the end of January. So it would be like sometime in early January 2021. That's the goal for version 6. When can we expect full round tripping between PCB and schematic? I'm not quite sure what that means, but I think we have quite a bit of that in place already. There was a feature that I know John didn't demo that we now have geometric annotation for boards. So you can actually annotate by board geometry and then back that up into the schematic and update the schematic according to the changes in the board. So there is some round tripping that's available now. I don't know what else the person who asked that question was expecting, but there is some of that. So that's that question. The next question is, what is the current plan to improve library management? Well, I'll let.
Yep.
Okay.
I can take that one. Yeah. So the question is, it's a long one in the text, but basically the question is about database libraries. So the concept of storing all your part information in some kind of a database and using that to have a small set of symbols and footprints that maps to a lot of different physical parts, and you can keep track of your manufacturer part numbers and all sorts of data. So I also think that's a very cool feature that some other tools have. I think the person who asked that question was comparing KiCad to some other commercial tools. That's definitely something I personally want. So that is on the list of things to be looked at in a future version. Maybe it'll be version 7. It's hard to say exactly what will be version 7 right now. But yes, that's a good feature. And I've actually already started some planning work for that. And there's a couple other people who've been discussing that with me. So that will be in KiCad at some point in the future.
Okay. Next question. Will the version 6 footprint editor be able to import DXF on copper layers and create a filled shape out of that? John?
Yeah, so I showed a little bit of that workflow in my demo, but basically the answer is yes. So you could already import DXF files, but before you couldn't do as much with those shapes that you imported as you might want to. And as I showed in the demo, you can now convert those to a filled polygon. When you import them into a board, you can convert them into a zone and things like that. So you can use that along with the custom pads feature that Jeff was talking about. So it's now, if you're using some kind of external CAD tool or script to create some really wacky footprint shapes, it should be a lot easier to do that now in version 6.
Yeah, to follow on with that, I should point out that we've also removed a whole bunch of the limitations that KiCad used to have to keep you safe, which sometimes got in the way. So for instance, if you want to put edge cuts in footprints, you can do that. If you want to put zones in footprints, you can do that. If you want to put, stuff that normally doesn't belong on copper layers, knock yourself out.
One thing I saw, I think it was in the chat coming through too, was asking about like interaction with SVGs directly. Is there any plans for that?
I think that's on the wish list.
Okay.
We were looking at, yeah, there was one feature that we'd really like to do, won't be in 6, but which is sort of related, is the ability to make to output an interactive PDF, so that like we had this feature request come in that when you print the schematic to PDF, that you'd be able to click on a symbol and see properties of the symbol, or get a link to its data sheet or that kind of stuff. We all think that's pretty neat. We haven't looked into it that much, so I don't know, how soon something like that might come down.
I think the question was related to like importing complex shapes to just PCB that was not like footprints and stuff, but just like art. But I mean, we should be able to import.
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier with something like a DXF than it is with a SVG today. So I think improving handling of SVGs is still on the wish list for some future version.
And then actually,
but yeah, but I think what people are referring to, I think this guy was talking about this something to Shenzhen library. I think they want to be able to resize graphical objects, like if they import a logo or something.
got it. Yeah.
Currently, I'm just aware of the SVG importer, where you can import it and you have it in the size that you made it in the source SVG. But that is possible in V6 as it is now.
Since we're talking about feature requests too, so if people are out there watching, listening, whatever, where is the best place for them to go, and what is the process for doing feature requests or trying to ask for that next thing? I mean, we've already kind of alluded to the fact that it is not a short list. There are prioritized things, but there might be some legitimate things that people are asking for. So where do people go to do that sort of thing?
I'll take that one. The obvious place to handle that is at the GitLab, the KiCad project GitLab site. If it's a source request, rather than, you would go to the source repo and submit an issue. That way, and then it would be tagged. You would tag it as a wish list item for some future development. It's always good to check to see if there's any wish lists already open for it. It turns out there's quite a few things that are wish lists that have already been, asked for. So just, try to keep the duplicate requests down. But there's the site. You just go over and up. You have to create a GitLab account, and then you sign in, and then you just make the request. The other option is there, you can go to the user forum. There's some discussion there about if you're not sure, look around on the user forum. There's usually discussion there about it. And then, once people kind of say, yeah, that makes sense, then you can head on over to the issue tracker for KiCad and then add it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of bring that up, that I'm certainly like a pragmatic engineer type here, and I guess when you have a feature request, I think you usually have a few different pieces in there, right? So like one is, I would like to do this thing, and so going to the GitLab and filing an issue may not be the most fastest or the most appropriate place to say, like, how do I do this thing? So I like, even like working on KiCad, I end up asking questions of people who use the tool more often and say, hey, I would like to do this thing. How is it that I do it? And once it gets around to people being like, yeah, I don't know how you do that, then it's more of the point to be like, okay, let's go see where it is. And then even like, I don't want to say that just because there's some wacky workaround that means that the team wouldn't ever want to hear that request. We still probably want to make it easier or straightforward and not to have people do workarounds. But if you have a feature request and it's not in the source code, it's unlikely that that's something someone's going to like bang out in a few hours and that it'll be ready for Monday or something like that. But on the other hand, if you go to the forum and say, I'm trying to do this wacky thing, people have scripts and people have workflows and things that just, they blow my mind constantly. And I think that it can be a pretty good way to first get the thing done, and then once it's done, or if it doesn't get done, to say, how do we make this easier in the future?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that is where I run into things like that. And yeah, it's a script, or maybe it's a plugin too. Like sometimes there's a plugin that's been developed to chase down that one thing that's just not in there yet. And it's just because it's an evolving project. That is the thing we love and thing we opposite of love about the project is that sometimes it's just not there yet. But I think the community really does help to get you where you need to go.
Yeah. I agree with Adam. It definitely makes sense, especially if you're not sure whether a feature exists or not. It's always good to go to the forum and ask. Somebody will help you out there pretty quickly, and who knows, maybe it's already there, and you just, maybe we as a team need to make it a little bit more discoverable. But I think that's always a good rule of thumb for somebody who's new to the project.
One other thing I'll say is, so I saw earlier one person was talking about like a way to contribute is to make YouTube videos, and I obviously am a big proponent of that. I think that's a great way to help extend what people can do with the thing. But like literally yesterday, I was trying to figure out how to use one of the plugins, and it was like a 2-minute search on YouTube too. So like that's another resource. See if people made tutorial videos about how to use that thing. It was like a 5-minute video. It took me another 5 minutes, and I was off to the races. And it was for replicate layout. It was literally it was that fast. So it was awesome.
Okay. The next question is comparing KiCad to other tools. And the questions are, two functions of another PCB design tool are output jobs and being able to select multiple objects and edit properties. John, you want to take that?
Yep. So I think I know what other tool this person was thinking about here. So yeah, both of these are good ideas and things that we're working on. So output jobs, Ian, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, so we don't have anything in V6 for output jobs, but we are planning in V7 to basically redefine the plotting system to be more of an output job system, to let you be able to generate Gerbers, PDFs, and multiple kinds of outputs, all from one specification. And part of that, we have this eventual goal to also bring kind of the step export into that. So right now you can do that, but it's not in the same plotting system. We'd like to eventually bring that into there. And in the distant future, we'll have to see exactly when this is, to hopefully bring this to more of a project level as well, so you can get schematic as well as board outputs at the same time. So for V7 at least, we're going to be looking into the board aspect of it and the schematic on their own. And then in the future, we'll hope to merge those two together as well as a project.
And then the second part of that was asking about selecting multiple items and modifying the common properties of them. So this was actually a feature that we've been talking about internally for a long time. It's a great idea, and we actually have some code in progress to implement that. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get that across the line for version 6. So it is on the short list of things that got moved from originally targeting version 6 to now looking at version 7. But this is definitely a feature that we want to bring to the programs where you can just sort of easily edit the properties of things that you have selected.
Yeah, interestingly on that, the underneath of that, the machinery behind it is mostly in and is used by the DRC rules to look at all the properties on various items, so that you can say, like, if this pad is on this layer, or if this pad is wider than 2 centimeters, or whatever it is that you need to test your DRC rule. That is actually all leaning on code that was written for the property inspector. It's just the inspector itself didn't make it in.
Okay. Next question. Is KiCad Dev Core under Python 3, or is it still 2.7? Ian, you're on deck.
Yeah. So it all depends on kind of which package you're looking at. As a core, we are still supporting Python 2 because that is what our Windows and Mac packaging uses. That's due to some dependency issues with the WX widgets binding into Python. But as Adam mentioned earlier, he's working at getting those updated to Python 3, at least for Mac OS. And then we also have some Windows developers working on getting those updated for Windows. But I believe all of our Linux packaging uses Python 3 now, so we do definitely support Python 3. We prefer you to use Python 3 if you're on Linux. And if you're willing to use Python 3 on other platforms, you can try. But the officially supported one is kind of 2 on Mac OS, 2 on Windows, and 3 on Linux until we get the packaging up to speed. But all the code base supports both.
Okay. And the last question was, what will the DRC system look like in KiCad 6? John covered that a little bit, but Tom, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, well, so as John and Jeff already showed you a glimpse of it, it's been redesigned to be based on expression-driven rules. So the objects that the choice of the objects and mapping between the objects, such as traces, vias, polygons, etc., and the rules they should meet, is now driven by expressions. So you have this awesome expression editor written by Jeff, and that's not the only thing that that new DRC contains. So we added a few more tests, mostly focused on high-speed digital boards. So now we have lens matching tests done in DRC is now capable to detect traces that are too short, too long, validate differential pairs if they are correctly coupled, if they fit a particular impedance on a particular layer. I can show you a quick demo of the lens matcher, for instance, if you're interested. This is still incomplete, and we'll be polishing it up during before the V6 stable comes out. Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Yep. So I don't know how it works.
So while Tom's getting that up and going, actually, I'm curious about the flow as well. So migrating projects to V6. So like you mentioned like how things are going to be changing in V6, but one thing that was a bit of a hiccup from 4 to 5 was just like how to get projects from into the new method and the new way of doing things. Could you go through what that looks like as Tom's getting his screen shared?
Actually, it crashed.
Uh-oh.
Like, see, I mean,
Do it live.
It's just like I can move my mouse, and well, it's not reacting to events. Sorry, I think I need to kill the browser.
Uh-oh.
So maybe Tom can make a video about that as well. Like that would be a really great thing to see, but maybe we could post that to the YouTube channel or similar.
Yeah.
Like John's been making these great animated versions for Twitter and similar. So
Okay.
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, there's hundreds of features that we're not going to be able to show today, but we can show in future videos. I can talk a little bit about the first part of that project question, and then maybe Wayne can talk about the library side of it. So in general, I think the short answer is we think that migrating from 5 to 6 is going to be less painful than migrating from 4 to 5.
Okay.
And when you open your project in a nightly build, or when you open it in 6 when it's released, it's automatically converted. So the project format changed also. We didn't talk about that today because it's kind of boring, but so your project file will be updated and your schematic files will be updated automatically. And those will be saved out, and then the new files obviously will only be able to be opened in the new version of KiCad, but your old files will be left alone. And so for the ones where we changed the format and changed the file extension, you'll still have those old files. Now the board file is we didn't change the extension, so once you open your board in version 6 and save it, you won't be able to go back to version 5 with that. So we always recommend, when you're first checking out a new version of KiCad, make sure you're working on a copy of your project, you have your project backed up, just so that if you need to go back to the old version, you still have files that will work with it. And we also changed the symbol library format in version 6. So Wayne, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, one of the things I forgot to mention, and like John said, it's kind of boring, the stuff that you don't see under the hood. Going forward, the old cache file is now obsolete. So the new schematic files will actually contain a copy of the symbols, the library symbols required to render the schematic. So one thing that changed significantly was when you use 5.1, if you modify a symbol library that's in your schematic, it will change. And so what happens is the next time you go to load, you'll get the old you'll get the cache check, and it'll say, do you want to recover any broken symbols or any changed symbols? That goes away now. The symbol will always be embedded in the schematic file, so there's never a cache file. That guarantees that your schematics will always be portable. So like say you take a schematic to a different computer that doesn't have a given library on, it won't matter because the schematic or the library symbol will be embedded in the schematic. Now, obviously that makes the schematics a bit larger, but it also makes them more portable. And we also added tools to similar to the it's very similar to how the board works with footprints. You know, you can update their tools to update the footprints from the original library. There's also tools now to update the symbol from its original library. That the workflow is very similar in that regard. So yes, the schematic files themselves will not be backwards compatible at all. So once you make that transition to 6, it's kind of a one-way.
It's one-way street.
Yeah, it's a one-way street.
Yeah, and I think that's what it really comes down to. It's just kind of like everyday interactions with the project. You guys are like so like in it, you know, like you're so like in it. I think about it from like the person coming to it from a fresh start or from, you know, version 5, or God forbid they're like, I'm just gonna go from 4 to 6. You know, like what does that look like? And so I think that was a great explanation. It does look like Tom is ready to come back in with a demo, maybe. So let's see, Tom, how we doing here? Thinking we might be able to do this?
Yeah. So.
All right, here we go. This is a live demo. Here we go.
Do you see any PCB new window?
Yes.
Yep.
They're okay. So just a quick one, and please bear in mind this is still a work in progress. So I will show you how to define a few rules for lens matched signals. So this is the Linux Sino board. You have here an ARM CPU with some DDR memories, and well, with DDR3, it's usually wise to correctly match the length of the skew of the signals between the clock and within the particular byte groups of the data mask, data strobe, and DQ1, DQ8, for instance. Yeah, we have 2 chips here. One is the let me switch back here. So this is the CPU, and there are 2 DDRs. One is the U2 and U3. The lower one takes care of the bottom 16 bits of the memory. The higher one, the upper one, takes care of the MSBs. So let's go to the design rule window, board setup, rules. So I created 2 very simple rules that will make sure.
Tom, is that window on a different screen? It's not showing up for us.
So it's not visible. Okay.
Maybe you shared only the window instead of your screen.
It doesn't work with the entire screen. So select window. I'm afraid it's well, I can try with the entire screen, but so do you see my screen now? There should be a board
Yes.
setup window.
Yes.
Good now.
Yep.
So
Yeah, working now.
So I started with creating 2 dummy net classes, just to group the nets together. Byte 0, which is for the lowest significant byte of the DDR CPU to DDR, and byte 1 for the second one. They need to be skew matched independently, because what really matters for the DDR memories is the skew between the data strobe, the DQS signal, and DQ or DM. So if you look at the nets, we take all the nets of the lower byte, of the lowest byte out of 32 bits. We assigned them to the net class byte 0. 10 the higher 8 bits of the lower DDR memory, they go to the net class byte 1. This is just to group the nets together. And if we move to the rules, there are 2. So one for the LSB, where we define we are interested in features topologically between U1 and U2. U1 is the CPU, U2 is the lower DDR chip, and in the net class DDR3 byte 0. Then we apply a constraint, skew maximum 2 millimeters. So it will make sure the DRC will check that the length of each track, each connection between U1 and U2 and within the net class of DDR3 byte 0 will never exceed 2 millimeters. So let's say if the average length is 2 centimeters, the acceptable range will be 19 millimeters to 21. We also did the same. I also did the same for byte 1, just to show you that multiple rules can be used in parallel. So let's try running the DRC now. Design rules checker, run DRC. By the way, in the final release, it will be a bit faster. Yep. So it reported a single error that the skew between in the byte 0 on data line 1 is slightly out of range. That means if it's negative, it means the trace is too short. So we can go there. Yeah, 1 is here. Let's move to another layer. Yeah, this is DQ1. Let's just add another meander. I'm not going to use the meandering tool. Just draw the trace by hand, and let's see what happens. This should make it slightly longer. Inspect, design rules checker, run. Yep, 0 errors. So the skew out of range error is gone. In the similar way, you will be able to constrain the length of differential pair, also check the impedances and coupling of differential pair signals. Unfortunately, I can't show it to you right now because it's slightly buggy for the moment, and we are still working on polishing it up so that you get proper user experience when the thing gets released. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, one more thing to mention on the future of DRC is that we're also looking at doing creepage stuff. Probably won't make it into 6.0 though.
Actually, I think the creepage test might get it to V6.
We'll sneak it in.
I'm not 100% sure, but chances are it will be there.
Great, awesome. Well, I'm going to take a quick second to mention. So if people saw the KiCon site. So we had two elements on there. One was obviously the Q&A chat that we're doing right now. But the second is that we are doing community talks. And so if you're on this page, KiCad.com, we'll have a link. Maybe someone could post a link in the chat as well. But you can submit a community talk, and we will be doing that either live or sharing those as part of the festivities here. One of the best things about last year and the in-person KiCon 2019 was the really great deep technical knowledge, that was shared there. Obviously, the being in person, having people speak was great as well. But we're hoping to do some more releases of things like this, and as people give talks, we'll do Q&A sessions. So if you're interested in doing that, please go over and submit a talk there, and we'll be doing those throughout the month of October, and we'll have schedules as well. So, and then if people are interested in hearing about them, there is a sign-up list here, and we'll email folks as those talks are being released. And and then of course you can always subscribe. There's a YouTube channel that you're probably watching this on. There's Facebook as well. We'll try and post at all those places, but that's something that we're going to try and do for the 2020 because we are remote. And then one other thing I wanted to mention is, Wayne brought this up earlier, but this is the Linux Foundation fundraising page. Like you mentioned, there's been a really great almost 20K in balance there. There are some sponsors organizations there, so thank you to all the sponsors. We don't have any, KiCon sponsors this year. Some people asked about that. If you're interested in supporting all of the wonderful developers that you see on the screen here, this is one of the best ways to do it. There's also a way via the main page to go and donate via the CERN Friends and Friends Foundation, and so that's another way to do it. And yeah, we definitely. I'm not showing my screen. Someone could have mentioned that. And so thank you to all the sponsors here, and it's great to see so many people contributing to this. Think of it as the KiCad Patreon throughout the year, so you can even do recurring donations and things like that. So hopefully people keep going with that as well. Were there any other questions on that list, or should we start just kind of going live?
Yeah, we covered everything that was pre-canned, so we can go live now with whatever questions folks might have.
Yeah. Cool.
I saw one on the list about. Sorry, Chris. I just saw one go by on pad stacks.
Yep.
Full pad stacks did not make it into 6.0, so we'll be looking at that for 7.0. However, I'm not sure what you would call it, but we do have the ability to drop out layers of a pad stack for pad or a via that are not connected, so that on layers that aren't connected to the through hole, you can route closer to it. What we don't have yet is the ability to define different shapes for each layer other than just pad or not pad.
Okay, great. There's a question here from Drew. He's asking about OrCAD. I think probably an importer or exporter. What is the role of importer exporters? Is that all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we left that out. You want me to take that one?
So I'll take that one. That's my importer. That's so the OrCAD importer, we don't do OrCAD on a binary format. Figuring that one out on a binary level is non-trivial, and so we're not trying to back end that. However, they do have a primitive export that gets the board layout, not the design rules or things of that nature, but the footprints and the tracks and things, called FabMaster. And we have an importer that is, I actually forgot to put that on the feature freeze exceptions list. So I might try to convince people that that's actually far enough along that we should put that in for V6. But yes, we have an import export for the FabMaster format that OrCAD created a number of years ago, and so that we should be able to import FabMaster. And I know there are some board houses that like to get the FabMaster files for their own building the boards. Right now, we support IPC, the D356 file, as well as the GenCAD export. But some board houses like the FabMaster export instead, and so those are planned for V6, and I just need to push the merge request forward on that.
Yeah, I think that interaction with the board houses, with assembly houses, just all the different formats that are out there, it's really an interesting kind of ecosystem, and like having to deal with all that stuff. It feels like a never-ending list of like things that assembly or board house might ask for. So it's like a whack-a-mole kind of game. Let's see. So we have another question here from Leandro. Any news for the 3D viewer?
Yeah, there's some cool new stuff in the 3D viewer. There was actually a blog post on the website that got posted in the chat that shares a little bit about the 3D viewer. I don't have a canned demo ready for it, but some recent changes include some just general fixes to the rendering, making the rendering look better, and also the start of cross-permitting in the 3D viewer. So it's not fully done yet, but you can now select a footprint in your board editor, and you will have that same component highlighted in the 3D viewer if you have it open. And you can also roll your mouse over parts in the 3D viewer, and you can get a little note in the status bar that shows you what the reference of that part is, which can be handy if you're trying to look at a 3D viewer situation.
This may already be in the nightlies. Let's see. This may already be in the nightlies. I find the copying pasting between instances very helpful. Is that coming to eSchema with the new schematic file format?
Yes, it actually came before the new schematic file format, but yes.
Okay. And just what's a little background on that? So that was basically if you copy pasted in the past, it created a new instance, and now it does not. Is that right?
Yeah, we didn't used to use the system clipboard at all. We just had some global variables, and it was all kind of a bit crufty. Both PCB new and EE schema now actually copy the text S expression format onto the clipboard. So you can even paste it into other applications like a text editor and whack it around a bit and copy it from the text editor and paste it into EE schema or PCB new, and you'll get symbols or footprints.
Great. What happens with the design rules when the parts are re-annotated?
I think generally nothing, but if one of your design rules is the expression involves a particular component reference, then you might have to change that expression to point to the new reference if you changed it.
Okay. Here's a really long question for everyone. Plugin manager? That's a great question, though. I mean, like, so right now it is. So you clone a repo and you pull it in. Is it? I'm guessing it's more like a more in-depth kind of like search it out or something like that. Maybe a global search for a plugin manager, like an app store kind of thing.
Yeah, that's actually on my feature freeze exception list here. The plugin manager. What we're working on right now is the back end where we keep those references and allow people to create their plugins and publish their plugins. This is also ties back to our integration with industry. So we are building out the ability for companies to integrate their web presence or their internet presence with KiCad, and part of that is giving them the ability to update and publish plugins that provide this interaction, and then push out new releases as they update their backend API or they change how they want to work with that. How we're working with this in version 6 is that the user submitted plugins that provide non-commercial features are going to be listed as without exception, provided that they meet some quality standards on in our plugin repository. And then the commercial plugins that provide commercial features that companies want to publish on here, provided they meet the same quality standards. And we have an agreement between KiCad and the company to work on a revenue sharing model with KiCad itself through the Linux Foundation. That's where we're pushing some of we're hoping to push some of our corporate interaction to help build out the KiCad project as a larger supported entity that can do all of the things that we've been talking about today, increase the release cadence and build out a lot of these new features. Our interaction with the larger industry, we're hoping to deepen, and we're hoping to broaden. So both of those are an opportunity for us to give our users more choices in how they interact with the companies that they use to buy their parts, buy their boards, as well as give those companies the ability to build out KiCad more and support the development of KiCad, support all the people that you see on the screen, and help us to make KiCad better in the future.
Great. Any updates coming to the Bitmat 2 component tool?
Yeah, not. I don't think were there any changes? Not that I'm aware of. I mean, there were some minor fixes, but I don't think there's any substantial changes to that for V6.
I think everything's once you get it in, you can now do much more with it, but nothing on getting it in.
Okay.
Right.
I feel like there should be a sad trombone music to that question.
So are there concrete plans for UI UX overhaul similar to what Blender did with 2.8?
So I think we kind of covered that earlier in the WX widgets question. I think the answer is no, we're not going to do a complete UI overhaul. And a follow-on to that is, yes, we do care a lot about UI and UX, and we're trying to find a good balance of continuing to improve the UI and UX of KiCad gradually, and also implementing all of these other features that people need in order to do their designs and do them more efficiently. So we're not going to stop and blow it up and start from scratch. I think we don't have that luxury. It wouldn't be helpful to people if we just stopped adding any other features in order to do that.
Have you guys thought about rewriting everything from scratch in like JavaScript or something?
Yeah. I mean, we could totally do that. Totally do that. And it's fun to think about that, but I think it's not really the right answer. But we do care a lot about UI and UX, and we're continuously looking at ways we can make better use of WX, sort of deal with some of its shortcomings better and provide a better UI. And we're also looking at ways that we might be able to integrate, more advanced UIs in the future that would play nicely with WX, where we wouldn't have to completely rewrite everything. We could just start gradually adding some new things here and there. And I saw there was a follow-up to that question about getting a UX designer into the core team. I don't know, Jeff, how much or little you consider yourself a UX designer, but
well, for most of I spent 25 years as a UX designer at Adobe, so I guess I'd have to say I am.
Got one.
So we're already there. Jeff cares a lot about UX. If you look at all of the work that Jeff does, he's always trying to push KiCad towards a better UX, and he also pushes the rest of the team towards better UX. It gives us, a lot of feedback on our designs, and I think it's been great to have his presence.
Yeah, and as a user, I'd say go watch some videos of version of the BZR days. It's like, oh yeah, we're we're making progress, folks. Like, it's a slow
Even
train, but
between-
it's moving. You know.
Even between version 4 and version 4. Version 5 and 5.1, this was already a huge improvement.
Yeah.
Well, that was about the time that Jeff came on the team. So
Yeah, so
Yeah, just to prove my credentials, I have a Mac and no other computers.
It's mythical. Let's see. So we got more questions here. One from Drew. Rounded track work that Seth has been doing, will that be a V7 feature? And maybe more broadly to add to that, like, what was the cutoff for V6 versus V7? Is just kind of like what's done and what's not, or?
Well, we had a basically since yesterday was the deadline. We knew we had a few things that were in progress and nearing completion, so we basically grandfathered those in. But anything above that is going to get pushed back to V7. So, like if somebody would come up and do a merge request today with some great gee whiz feature, it would have to go. It would be pushed back to version 7.
Got it. Okay. And that's where people can go and look at that the GitLab and see what's. I mean, it's all tagged for the different releases and stuff as well, right?
Yes.
But
Yes.
some part of curve tracks is an exception for feature freeze, wasn't it, Seth?
Yeah.
Sounds like Seth gets a lot of special treatment here, folks. That's all I'm saying. You know, like he.
Everybody has something on that list. It's not just Seth.
I might be a little more behind the other developers. that might be part of it. I as Wayne mentioned, I was off for a couple of months over the summer doing the open ventilator work. So a lot of my work, some of my things got pushed back a little bit, but the curve tracks actually it got merged quite a while ago, but we've had a lot of infrastructure changes and how the bits that the curve tracks depended on were changed in a way, which is good. This is how we develop, but it does need a rethink now again. And so this is part of the RC1. All of the baseline of the curve tracks is in the code base right now, and the remaining work is actually like getting that drawing working again, and the push and shove. But this is not a V7 feature. This is a V6 feature.
We actually talked not in the short term. Those are rather complex. We actually talked to a few developers at FOSDEM over the last couple of years about integrating, because there actually are some temperature analysis. There's quite a few EMI tools, some really good RF tools out there, but that would require us to export accurate 3D geometry to those tools to be able to do the simulations. At some point, I would like to, at the very least, be able to directly export to what those tools need. Whether we actually formally integrate stuff like that, I think that's kind of one of those way out in the future things that we certainly could look at and be really interesting. But that's pretty advanced, high level tool stuff. But it's definitely something that could happen.
I know one of our developers has it as their pet project.
Go ahead, Seth. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I think Thomas Pointhuber was, he had a branch. He was talking about that, and I think he's looking at that in V7. So,
yeah, there were a bunch of pretty detailed specs up somewhere too, I think, I can't remember whether that was Thomas that had done it or not.
And Tom, also, one feature that didn't get mentioned yet, Tom has an export feature to hyperlinks that can do some of this analysis as well. If anyone has a couple of grand, tens of thousands of grand that they want to.
I mean, they could also donate it to the project if they really had like money just like sitting around in piles, you know.
Yeah, if our Berkeley lab guys are watching this, yeah, that was done for you. I hope you find it useful.
Nice. All right, let's see. So anything towards version control for projects, I'm guessing built in, but also mentioning product lifecycle like PLM tools. So that seems like the PLM is more like more on the BOM management side of things, but version control could be more like Git integrations or similar.
Yeah, or
Yeah, so
diffing.
I said something about this in the chat. Or, sorry, go ahead.
I think this is also, it was also mentioned in the chat in the past, diffing, graphical diffing of designs, so schematic or board or library assets.
There's an open feature request for that I created, and maybe I'll work on for version 7. We'll see. I think it would be really cool to have a good diff viewer, and I think the way that I think we would approach version control is to provide a good diff tool that you would integrate with your version control software of choice, whether that's Git or something else. I don't see us writing our own version control inside tool like some of the commercial tools do. I think that's just not as good a use of our time as some other things we could be doing.
All right.
I will note there was last year at KiCon, there was a question/complaint about the difficulty that people had with storing the schematics in their version control and kind of unnecessary changes in the version control when you save your files. And we put a lot of work into this in V6 to keep the individual files consistent across saves. So if you're storing your files in Git or Subversion or CBS or whatever you're using, then you can, you'll probably see that this is a much cleaner implementation. My kids are in the background searching for breakfast at the moment.
Yeah, worldwide project means people are grabbing different meals at different times in background. So there's a couple of questions about push and shove, but for differential pairs. But that's what Tom was talking about, right?
Yes. So some people were asking if the PNS will support differential pairs as a kind of first-class object. So we are certainly going to fix issues like the optimizer breaking the differential pair coupling or connections. This will be certainly fixed. I'm not sure if we'll make it to V6 with a tool that lets you edit differential pairs as a whole, as a single object, instead of editing a single trace. But if it will happen early in V7. So to sum up, dragging single traces of a single trace of a differential pair will respect differential pair coupling in V6. Further improvements will happen in V7.
Great. Oh, here we go. So here's one from Drew that I think he pulled from other places, but yeah, this was maybe in the forum as well. But are there any kind of marketplace for common circuits or snippets or anything like that, or is that more on the community side, external sites?
Yeah, I would think that would be more on the community side. I mean, we don't have a snippets per se. The only snippets I'm aware of in KiCad are code snippets on GitLab. Okay. But
I think one thing we might do to make that easier is to get the Python API into the schematic editor, which Seth and some others are working on. That'll make it easier if people want to use Python to create that kind of a browser for subcircuits or things like that.
I mean, for now, when it's possible to copy the S expressions to your clipboard, you could sort of say we are supporting it a little bit. We just don't host it anywhere. It's easier for people to move small bits from some other place to their own project.
Yeah, there's an open wish list item on GitLab for exactly this, a browsable online system where people can bring in essentially reference designs into their schematics and PCB at the same time. So if this is a feature you care about, head over to GitLab. Give it a thumbs up. Let us know that you care about it, and enough people do that, we look at it more closely.
Okay, one on the kind of the personal side of things, I guess. But how much time do you spend on the actual project individually? Is it a significant portion of your time, or is it like a hobby thing, or how does it all play together?
Less time than he spent posing for that picture.
I think that's actually Robert Downey Jr., so I doubt that's Robert Downey
I
Jr.
know, the makeup must have taken forever.
That's funny. I'll start. I mean, for me, it's a full-time job. I'm working full-time on KiCad. It's more than 40. I can tell you it's not. It's much more than 40 hours a week. But everybody here is in a little different situation than I am. But most of us are part-timers. But there are a few of us that are full-timers.
I'm retired, so I'm more or less full-time, although unpaid. Well, I submitted a couple small projects to CERN that I got paid for, but
okay.
You can thank Adobe for most of my content.
Yeah, for me, it varies. This year is kind of different from the past years I've been working on the project. So in past years I had other hobbies and could do them. And this year, due to circumstances, I've had a lot more time to spend on KiCad, so that's what I've been doing. I work a day job full time, and so I'm working nights and weekends. But I've had more free nights and weekends this year, so been getting more done.
Yeah, for me it's kind of the other way around. I was a student in the past, or part-time student, full-time library maintainer. And now I'm in my job, so this year it's a bit less. So that's also why I gave somebody else the chance to take over the helm.
Yeah, so I'm actually a PhD student right now, so I have a bit more time, but I still, during the day, I lurk, but I do most of my work actually in the evenings and on the weekends then for KiCad, when I've thought about all the math I can do.
Well, in my case, it depends on my current workload, and since we are getting close to the startup of the machines at CERN, I'm a bit busy with other projects. So my contributions to KiCad are not as large as they used to be. Yet I'm trying to find a few hours a week to work on it.
Cool. Great. Well, here's another question about so panelization and panelization integration without scripts. So are there any plans for a tool for that? And generally just kind of output creation, I think.
You guys want me to take that one?
Everyone's just jumping on that one.
Yeah, nobody wants to touch that one. Here's my proverbial 10-foot pole. I'm not touching that one. In the past, I mean, I've made it clear that KiCad's goal is really not to be a panelization tool. It's not that we don't want to support it if we can in a reasonable fashion. It's just that the way it's been done in the past, if you try to panelize it, which you can do, but you have to jump through a lot of hoops to make it work. There's no short-term plan on doing that. I mean, maybe at some point when we get rid of we knock out some of the major features that we want to do that are really for design and layout, then maybe we can revisit that. But not in the short term. I don't see KiCad pushing hard to become a panelization tool.
Great. One thing we did want to call out here is we did have an official unofficial badge this year. So Thomas made this awesome Blinky badge, and actually made a template for it, so you could go and start with this project. I believe make your own version of the badge as well. So this is super awesome. I should mention too, before we knew that the conference was going to be virtual. Let me tell you, some of the team members here started getting very excited about badge generation as well. So I think having more time for the 2021 conference might be a downside in disguise. But this is a really cool look from Thomas. So thanks to him for that. I think we're winding down on questions here. I'm going to go scan Twitter while we ask the next one here if there's any others. Any other thoughts from you guys about what else we should be mentioning while I go and scan Twitter? Make sure I didn't miss anything. No? All right.
Someone asked about 2581 support, Seth.
Oh, yeah, 2581 didn't make it. We're pushing that back to V7. So
Can you explain the 2581? What is it IPC or?
Sure. Yeah, this is an IPC standard. This is there have been a lot of attempts over the years to replace Gerber, and Gerber is the gray lady of PCB PCB manufacturing. It will never die, but it still has a lot of limitations. And I know that UCAMCO is updating this. They're continuing to try to address these limitations while still maintaining backwards compatibility. But so all of UCAMCO's fabrication equipment will do this, but all of the other people who are not UCAMCO, they're kind of on their own with a lot of the new Gerber work. So IPC brought together a large group of industry people and designed this replacement standard that would be an open standard that would be free for anyone to use and would respond to the needs of a broad cross section of industry. So it's not controlled by any one company within the industry. It's controlled by the IPC itself, and it defines a new way of interacting with your fabrication house. In other words, it creates not just a one-way path for interaction, but it provides for also a two-way path. So if you send a 2581 file to a supporting fabrication house and they have manufacturer issues with it, they can put those issues directly in your 2581 file as a layer, send it back to you, and in theory your design software can open that up and you view that issue in your design software. You can address the issue, send them back the exact same file with the issue addressed, and then you kind of have a complete record of the full fabrication process in this file that you can go back and you can modify. So it's a really neat format. It's a really neat idea, and we just didn't have the time this release cycle to get it integrated. But it's on my V7 list, and if there are any manufacturers or board, any manufacturers out there, any companies out there that really like this idea, really like this feature, you should head over and talk to Wayne or myself at KiCad Services. We can definitely, things that people pay us for always make it into the feature freeze, and the features that are just kind of on the wish list. We work in as we have time. So that was kind of the case with this one. We hope to get in for V6 and it just didn't make the cut, but hopefully for V7.
Someone mentioned to say something about the new importers that are in. I not up to speed on this, but there were 3 or 4 of them, or at least 2 or 3 of them written for V6, weren't there?
Yeah, so there's 2 new ones in V6. Tomas made a new one for the circuit board version from Altium. And then we had a new contributor, Roberto, who made one for both the schematic and the circuit board for CADStar. So you can import both those. And then we also additionally still have Eagle Importer. There have been some bugs fixed along the way, of course, in V6 with Eagle Importer as well.
And both those people are in the chat, so thanks a lot for those contributions. It's really exciting seeing KiCad be able to bring in more files.
Yes, thank you. Those are big contributions.
Hey, folks, I have to step out, so.
Well, I think we're actually out of questions anyway, so that's a great great time for us to all sign off. So thank you all for being here. If you don't know, we'll post a link to the KiCon page in the chat as well. So go there, check that out. We'll hopefully have some community talks coming up here in the month of October, and we'll try and do more broadcasts like this in the future. Hopefully in person first, but then maybe some developer chats like this as well.
Hopefully we'll see everyone next year at KiCon 2021, and hopefully it'll be live.
Yeah.
And if you're as excited about V6 as I am, then follow along. You can follow the blog on the website. You can follow the GitLab if you want to see the nitty gritty detail. And a couple of us are going to keep posting teasers and tours of the new features on Twitter and YouTube as we get closer to the release.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and we appreciate it. We'll have this video. This video will be up on YouTube, of course, and the other places to watch after the fact too. So, rewatch to your heart's content.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.